let's go to boxing. You said something earlier. You said boxing is fragmented, right? That's the word you use. And for me, when I look at NBA, I would see there's a commissioner, boom, they call the shots. Then you have the Players Association, you have the Owners Association, and then there's a collective bargaining agreement. But for the most part, you know, the NBA is going from the top and there's a decision being made. When you look at boxing, you see the WBA, right, which is what? The World Boxing Association.
Yeah, the organizations, the belts.
You got the WBC, World Boxing Council. You got the IBF, International Boxing Federation. You got the WBO, World Boxing Organization. Then you have the promoters, Hearn, Arum, the Al Sheikh guy, you know, who's doing his thing. Who is the shot caller in boxing? Is there anybody that is a shot caller in boxing or no?
There is no shot caller. You can argue maybe the commissions. Like, for instance, if you fight in Vegas, the commissioner rules. The commissioner is the one who calls the shots because he can basically give you a license or not license you to fight in his state, in Nevada. And
so they own the most power? Would you say that?
I would say they would. I say they would have the most power, the most influence.
Got it.
Las Vegas, Nevada, the mecca of boxing. This is where all the big major fights have happened. A lot of history here. So there's a lot of experience here in Nevada when it comes to boxing and the commissions. But like I mentioned, boxing is so fragmented. Well, every state has a commissioner. So every state is making their own rules, is making their own decisions. So basically it's kind of like the wild, wild west, basically, where if you go to Nevada, you have different rules than New York or New Mexico.
Who has the best rules? Who has the rules that you're like, you know?
The enforceable rules are here in Nevada. Yeah.
Okay.
They enforce them.
Who feels safest here? Promoters, fighters, or, the media platform that make the money?
I think all of the above.
All of those three feel safest here.
Nevada has figured it out. Nevada has figured out, okay, we need network, we need promoters, we need the fighters. Let's take care of everybody and be fair.
So one would say, I don't know if you can play this card, but let's see if you could or not. Being a devil's advocate, okay? And saying, hey, Oscar, but look at UFC. Look at what they're doing. Look how they've grown. Look how, there is no politics. Dana, like, it's the only thing where if the referees get it wrong, he'll chew out the referee and be like, I can't believe, well, what was he thinking? What is that all about? While in NBA, they're so diplomatic. No, well, you can't say something like that. Fine $50,000, fine Mark Cuban, fine because he said something. But in UFC, I think it's the only sport where the commissioner running it calls out the referees who get it wrong. You don't see that in any other sport. I don't even think you see it in boxing. In boxing, sometimes, the criticism with boxing is the fact that, I think for every 3 fight that goes into decision, one of them people are going to be like, it's fixed. I don't trust it. There's bullshit. It's the mob. It's the da-da-da-da-da-da, like all this stuff. Zero things like that said with UFC. Why do you think UFC has been able to grow the way it has, where a lot of people say maybe one day it'll take over boxing? Why do you think they have done that?
First of all, the UFC will never take over boxing. I think it's two separate sports, and there's room for all of us. The UFC, when Dana White and the Fertitta brothers bought UFC, it was a distressed asset. I believe they bought it for like $2 million. And that space, that combat space, was never developed. There was no other league. It's not like boxing where you have history and years, hundreds of years where boxing existed, right? And so our system was already in place. Our distressed system was already in place for boxing. With the UFC, they built from scratch. They built it from the start. So they made up their own rules. They consolidated everything under one roof, and they were able to build a monster.
How much of that would you say is because money backing? How much of that you think is because Dana's a great operator? In my opinion, he's the best commissioner in all of sports. I don't think anybody does a better job commissioning than him. How much you think it's him? How much you think it's the money, the marketing, the opportunity, the support to Trump, or it's the collective? Where would you
It's collective. It's collective. And we cannot forget about the Fertitta brothers, the brainchilds behind the machine. Dana White has done an incredible job with running the machine. But the Fertitta brothers are the ones who had the vision to buy the UFC and literally build it from scratch. See, you didn't have UFC promoters competing when they bought the UFC. You didn't have combat sports promoters at all. That space was empty. That space was forgotten. Boxing was running 1,000 years prior to when they bought the UFC. It was already a mess. And to undo the mess is probably almost impossible.
Yeah, I think when you hear the story, it's Dana, this guy who builds the UFC, and his idea is to have sharks swimming around the cage. I don't know if you've seen this or not, but the guy had ideas of sharks literally swimming around the cage, and we're going to fight in the middle. And it's like, oh my God, this is crazy. And then Dana brings us up to the brothers, and they're like, okay, let's go. And then they split it up. I think equity-wise, it was 10%, 90%, whatever the structure was. And Dana ends up making a lot of money with it.
Sure.
But you see that turning into where it's at right now. In these uncertain times, if there's anything we need, is we need people to believe the future looks bright. So if you've heard about me saying this mission to you, we're on a mission to get 1 million people to wear this gear. And this is what we're doing. If you buy one of these hats, there's a category of buying one hat, getting the second one free. If you haven't yet worn this gear publicly, go ahead and test it out. Buy some of the gear, wear it in public, and see how many people will stop by and say, you also watch Valuetainment? You also follow PBD Podcast? I do too. Place your order. Go to vtmerch.com, click on the link above or below, place your order, and represent the VT and the PBD Podcast gear.
So if you like this clip and you want to watch another one, click right here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click right here.